Excellencies, distinguished speakers, distinguished guests, I have the pleasure and the privilege to welcome you on behalf of the European Public Law Organization and its director and the president of the board of directors, Professor Spyridon Flogaitis, to the premises of the EPLO, this historic building. Behind you, you have the Acropolis. On the right, you have the Roman Agora. On the left, the Athenian Agora. This is an inspiring historic place where the premises of the EPLO are hosted. And it is a great pleasure to have you with us today. The other speakers are connected online, and they will be speaking through Zoom during the next panel of this event. Let me say a few words about the European Public Law Organization. We are a full-fledged international organization. The seat of the organization is in Athens, Greece, but we have premises in Rome, premises in Portugal, and in other capitals of the 14 member states of the organization. And we do have a network of 78 universities which are connected to our organization and which are bringing their know-how and expertise and developing jointly with us best practice that we are sharing not only with our own member states and universities, but also broadly as, notwithstanding the name European, this is a global international organization. We want to promote the European model of governance, the good practice that the European Union is developing in terms of the rule of law, human rights, anti-corruption, and other good governance patterns that we are promoting. And of course, as the broad spectrum of our organization covers other issues as well, energy, environment, climate, we are very happy also to promote best practice in relation to all these important areas which are covered by the EPLO and by its institutes. I have the pleasure and privilege to be the director of the Circular Economy and the Climate Institute. Circular Economy, welcome Professor Moropoulou, please be seated. Circular Economy is the new economic model which covers all the policy areas, not only of the European Union, but it is a worldwide model. And of course, circular economy will enable us to boost energy transition and reach climate neutrality. The specificity of this event where we are all present is that we are combining in the first panel the policy, politics, and broader legal framework, UNFCCC, Kyoto Protocol, the Paris Agreement, but also the outcomes of the various COPs, including the last one, COP29. So this is the first panel. The second panel is the business sector and the role of the business sector in the energy transition and how the business sector can contribute to the energy transition and become a driver for the energy transition while promoting environmental and social governance and circular economy in its activities. And last but not least, the third panel is a panel which was not very present in Baku. It was more present in Dubai with the creation of the group of the Friends of the Presidency on Culture and with a declaration. But Baku did a lot on the financing issues. And I must say that I and Faisal Limi, the Deputy Director of the Institute, and other gentlemen and ladies from this distinguished audience were present in Baku, and we have appreciated a lot the organization. I was in the last 4 COPs. I believe that this was the best organization, and indeed the outcome, especially the work during the last day, midnight -5, was so intense that has enabled us to reach important results on the financial dimension, which will be presented by the following speakers. And the good thing is that we have the representative of the presidency and of the host country, Ambassador Arif Mamadov. Your Excellency, we are very happy to have you with us. We have the representative of the next COP, COP30 in Belém in Brazil, and we are looking forward, all of us, to join you there, where we hope that the cultural dimension will be a little bit more promoted. Professor Loizidou will chair, Moropoulou, sorry. Professor Loizidou is the soulmate, if I may say so, of Professor Moropoulou, will highlight this dimension. And of course, Mr. Kollias will be joining us. He's the advisor to Deputy Minister Zdoukou. He was also present in Baku, and he will give us the view and the perspective from the side of the Greek government. This having been said, and without ado, I would like to give the floor to His Excellency. Before that, I would like to thank Mr. Gregory Dimitriadis, who is the CEO of the GrowthFund of Greece. He might join us later for his support, and to thank as well Mr. Vangelis Karamitsios, who is the president of the Hellenic Recycling Agency, for his support. He went to the Mount Athos, so I think he's fully excused. And I told him to pray for our planet and for the humanity, because we really need prayers to support this very challenging period for all of us. Your Excellency, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kremlis. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, first of all, I would like to thank organizers, especially my good friend, Mr. George Kremlis, for inviting me to this event. It's a real pleasure to be among you. Dear friends, with its high level of organization, positive participant feedback, and substantial outcomes, COP29 is a significant achievement for Azerbaijan. This event marked a pivotal moment for the South Caucasus, bringing together 80 world leaders and 76,000 participants from 196 countries. It was the largest international event ever organized in the region. The successful hosting of such a large-scale event is a testament to Azerbaijan's organizational professionalism. Baku's modern infrastructure, stringent security measures, and welcoming environment earned widespread acclaim. From a diplomatic perspective, COP29 demonstrated Azerbaijan's ability to bridge divides and foster dialogue on pressing global issues. Before COP29, doubts loomed over its potential success due to significant disagreements between developed and developing nations, particularly regarding financial and technological support. A key challenge was resolving debates over financial commitments, which required extended negotiations. Talks ran late into the night of November 24th, culminating in a consensus that marked a triumph for international cooperation. Extending the conference by a day ensured these critical agreements were finalized. Several landmark agreements emerged from COP29. First of all, the Baku Finance Goal, a new commitment to channel 1.3 trillion US dollars of climate finance to the developing world each year. This goal contains a core target for developed countries to take the lead on mobilizing at least 300 billion per year for developing countries by 2035. This core target, combined with resources from multilateral lending institutions and the private sector, will reach 1.3 trillion in climate financing. Success on the COP29 presidency's top priority for the UN Climate Summit represents a significant uplift from the previous climate finance goal of 100 billion USD and will unlock a new wave of global investment. Secondly, COP29 ended the decade-long wait for the conclusion of Article 6 negotiations on high-integrity carbon markets under the UN. This was one of the presidency's top priorities for the year, and it drove parties towards this milestone achievement through intensive dual-track technical and political negotiations. This strategy broke through years of stalemate and finalizes the last outstanding item in the Paris Agreement. Article 6 provides trusted and transparent carbon markets for countries as they collaborate to reach their climate goals. Financial flows from compliant carbon markets could reach 1 trillion per year by 2050. They also have the potential to reduce the cost of implementing national climate plans by 250 billion per year. When combined, the Baku Finance Goal and Article 6 will forever change the global climate finance architecture by redirecting investment to the developing world. Third, the COP29 presidency also succeeded in getting the Fund for Loss and Damage up and running and ready to distribute money in 2025. This decision was long awaited by developing countries, including small island states, least developed countries, and African nations, as the fund's purpose is to provide financial assistance to countries most vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. In September of this year, during the fund's third board meeting held in Baku, critical measures were taken to commence its operations, including the appointment of the fund's executive director. Within the framework of COP29, several important agreements related to the Loss and Damage Fund were signed. This includes the Trustee Agreement and Secretariat Hosting Agreement between the fund's board and the World Bank, as well as the Host Country Agreement between the fund's board and the host country, the Republic of the Philippines. To date, the total pledged financial support for the fund exceeds 730 million US dollars. With these achievements, the Loss and Damage Fund will be able to start financing projects beginning in 2025. This marks yet another success of Azerbaijan's COP29 presidency. Azerbaijan's impartiality and effective climate diplomacy played a vital role in securing these outcomes. Acting as a bridge between developed and developing nations, Baku facilitated compromises that advance the global climate agenda. By advocating for increased financial support for developing countries, Azerbaijan further underscored its commitment to equitable climate action. Parallel to delivering a balanced package of negotiated priorities, the COP29 presidency's action agenda called on a wider group of stakeholders to contribute to global climate action. The action agenda, which included 14 global and 7 regional initiatives, confronts some of the most pressing problems, shine a light on forgotten priorities, offer unique solutions based on the experiences and perspective of the host, and reinforce coherence and COP-to-COP continuity. They serve to complement existing initiatives and bring new creative approach to climate challenges. These initiatives include Baku Initiative for Climate Finance, Investment and Trade. The COP29 presidency brought together different stakeholders to ensure that finance, investment, and trade remain at the center of the climate agenda. Energy pledges and declarations. The COP29 presidency launched its pledges and declarations on energy storage, grids, green energy zones, green corridors, and hydrogen, which were endorsed by 150 parties. COP29 declaration on green digital action. More than 75 governments and over 1,100 members of the digital tech community endorsed the declaration to use digital tools to reduce emissions and strengthen climate resilience. Baku Initiative on Human Development for Climate Resilience. A joint statement among 8 UN agencies, 3 multilateral development banks, and 3 climate funds saw the adoption of the Baku Guiding Principles on Human Development for Climate Resilience. Climate and Health Continuity Coalition. 5 COP presidencies from COP26 to COP30, alongside the World Health Organization Director General, embedded health into the climate agenda and advocated for health to be a core feature of future COP conferences by introducing the Baku COP Presidency's Continuity Coalition for Climate and Health. Reducing methane from organic waste declaration. Over 50 countries, including 8 of the world's 10 largest organic waste methane emitters, and representing 51% of the global methane emissions from organic waste, endorsed a declaration committing to sectoral targets to reduce methane from organic waste within future naturally developed contributions, which will contribute to the implementation of the global methane pledge. Baku Harmonia Climate Initiative for Farmers, a platform that brings together the dispersed landscape of existing climate initiatives in the field of food and agriculture to support farmers' access to finance. COP29 Declaration on Enhanced Action in Tourism commits more than 60 government endorsers to promote sustainable tourism practices by reducing emissions and increasing resilience in the sector, ultimately positioning tourism as a key component of climate solutions. COP29 Declaration on Water for Climate Action. With endorsers from over 50 countries, this declaration will take an integrated approach to combating the causes and impacts of climate change on water basins and water-related ecosystems. It advocates for the integrations of water-related mitigation and adaptation measures in national climate policies. In addition, during COP29, multilateral development banks announced projections for their contributions to climate action as 170 billion per year by 2030. We brought together over 1,000 private and philanthropic leaders from more than 70 countries at the Business Investment and Philanthropic Climate Platform, where investor groups with over 10 trillion in assets united to deploy private capital into climate markets. Pledged to climate finance projects and initiatives totaled 7.3 billion on finance, investment, and trade day, with the largest support coming from the Asian Development Bank, the Azerbaijani banking sector, Sweden, and Canada. Development finance institutions pledged to support the 10 gigawatt Lighthouse Initiative for renewable hydrogen projects in emerging markets and developing countries. Over 50 shipping industry actors agreed to accelerate zero and near zero emission fuels by 2030, translating to at least 5 million tons of green hydrogen. Azerbaijani presidency signified the role of cooperation and peace as indispensable to global climate action, with the COP Truth Appeal garnering support from 132 countries and 1,200 organizations, as well as the Baku Call on Climate Action for Peace, Relief and Recovery being adopted, an initiative which will launch the Baku Climate and Peace Action Hub to address the urgent nexus of climate change, conflict, and humanitarian needs. In general, during Baku COP, 52 important decisions were adopted. This COP will be remembered as a defining moment in the global fight against climate change. The agreements and consensus achieved during the summit demonstrates the critical role Azerbaijan played in fostering international cooperation. Beyond the tangible outcomes, COP29 also highlighted Azerbaijan's organizational and diplomatic capabilities. As both host and neutral mediator, Azerbaijan demonstrated its readiness to address global environmental challenges, leaving a lasting legacy. The success of COP29 not only contributes to the fight against climate change today, but also sets an enduring example for future international cooperation. Thank you for your attention.
Your Excellency, I would like to thank you very much for this thorough presentation of the outcomes of COP29 in Baku. As you have said, on 52 key areas, deliverables have been reached, more or less ambitious, some ambitious in terms of the financial package that was agreed. And one has to say that without financing, and we really need trillions, much more than what has been decided, to be contributed from the public and the private sector as well. And this is one of the key elements that was illustrated there. Article 6, through the carbon credits, will contribute to that effect. But the financial package, once again, is extremely important because it will boost mitigation, on the one hand, which is a key concern for all of us, not to exceed the 1.5 degree, and we are almost there. And on the other hand, to boost resilience. And resilience has been highlighted as we are all vulnerable. Greece has suffered a lot because of the climate crisis, and not only Greece, Spain and other parts of the globe. We see this every day in the media. So resilience is extremely important. And as I often say, through circular economy, we need to build this holistic model, which inter alia will on the one hand reduce emissions, but on the other will build this new culture on circular economy and will boost adaptation resilience. So thank you very much for this presentation. Without ado, I would like now to give the floor to the next speaker, who is connected online, the Deputy Director General for Climate Action, DG Klima, Mr. Jan Dusik, a very good friend of mine. We were together in the same unit in DG Environment. We have shared a lot of interesting topics and challenges at the time. And now Jan, who was in Baku, is a key driver of the climate policy of the European Union. We are proud to say that the European Union and its member states is a pioneering force. We are a driver of the energy transition towards climate neutrality. And as Jan was in Baku and has participated actively there, we will be grateful to him to hear the views of the European Commission in respect to the outcomes of Baku, and also the new prospects after Baku, from Baku to Belém. Jan, you are most welcome. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much, George. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry I cannot be with you in between Acropolis and Agora. Instead, I'm in between the Commission, Council and the Parliament in Brussels. The good news is that at the moment it's not raining, so I can at least be a bit closer in terms of the climate to Athens. But I hope that I can address you with these short remarks from Brussels. Well, we are now almost 1 month after the COP, several weeks. I think that we can still feel the tiredness of the intense days that we spent together, and nights sometimes, often in Baku. But I think that the agenda of the COP merited our full attention. It was from the outset defined as the finance COP. So obviously, climate finance was the main focus of the Conference of Parties. It was also a COP that is taking place in the Eastern European region. So I remember in my past life in the Czech government that we have been working together in the Eastern European group how to make this Conference of Parties an important milestone on the series of the climate COPs, and how to achieve the important and not easy task of making the right decisions on finance. So happy that we arrived, even though with a delay of the meeting to those conclusions. So in the end, on that late Saturday night or Sunday morning, we were happy to welcome the Baku Climate Unity Pact, as it was called, and in particular the essential part of it, the new collective quantified goal of the at least $300 billion that should be achieved by 2035, and the debate was not easy. I think that what we have achieved is an important stepping up of the previous 100 billion commitment that was first achieved in 2022, and now we have the new collective commitment to find the additional resources. Obviously, the discussion was an important progress was made how this money will be available, in particular to the countries which are most needed, those who are the most impacted by climate change and who are at the front line of the fight against climate change, and also to enable the collection of resources not only from the traditional developed countries' contributions, but from those who have the ability to contribute to financing climate action, including importantly the private sector as well, and mobilizing additional resources. And in that sense, it's important to recognize the collective call to scale up the 300 billion into the 1.3 trillion, and the work that was in a way started in Baku, and that will be with us as we are moving from Baku to Belém through the roadmap that was agreed, and that we will all be ready to follow the leadership of the COP29 as well as COP30 presidencies. In terms of financing, further important achievement was the commitment to tripling the adaptation funds by 2030. Obviously, adaptation to climate change is very important, and it needs to receive due attention. And we, for the EU, were very happy that we have this collective commitment. And His Excellency mentioned the agreement on Article 6, which is something that has taken a number of years. How to make sure that we can use the international carbon markets, compulsory and voluntary, in boosting climate action, in reducing the emissions, and in facilitating the ability for countries around the world in being part of the solution. So that now, with the agreement that was achieved during COP29, we can see that we have the framework, we have the integrity that is ensured, and the robustness of the systems, which make it a precondition to be effective and appropriate mechanism for operating the international carbon market. As the EU, we were somewhat disappointed that we couldn't get much further on mitigation. We were hoping that we could make additional steps building on Dubai, on COP28. there is some important language of reconfirmation, but certainly we are hoping, as we are moving towards the next COP, that this will be more on the spotlight. All in all, COP29 in Baku was a sign of the multilateral cooperation working. And of course, we know that we are living in challenging geopolitical times, also times of great changes in leaderships in the countries, and the significance on being able to agree on the difficult issue of, in particular, climate finance should not be underestimated. And what also should not be underestimated is the strength of the current of climate action. That it is not just the negotiations of the governments, but if you see the engagement of the businesses, if you see the platform that the conferences of parties provide today in showcasing solutions, in making agreements, in inspiring one another, I think that is, in spite of the rather grim situation with where we are with the progress of climate change, this is a sign of hope that together with the governments there is a life out there that is all oriented in progressing with decarbonization and with fighting the climate challenge. We were all very thrilled by the excellent organization that Azerbaijan, as the host country, has achieved for the conference, and the enabling conclusions for the results that we were able to collectively achieve. So thank you for that once more, Your Excellency. Now, as George said, we are already moving on, and we will be moving from Baku to Belém in alphabetic order, somewhat. But obviously, the focus will also be shifting. The important task ahead of us is the new set of the nationally determined contributions. We have heard already during COP29 some encouraging announcements, for instance, from Brazil, from the United Arab Emirates, United Kingdom, and there are new commitments coming up. The EU is working on its own nationally determined contribution. And what we need to ensure with the whole process, that we have the hope that we can stay within the 1.5 degree as we have agreed in the Paris Agreement. Just today, the last one, the NDC coming from the United States. Again, that's one important contribution to the process. We have seen that Brazil is already very much tuned to being the host of the next conference of parties. They have already been very active towards Baku with their G7 presidency, and we have also seen that Brazil has taking up an important step in adopting their own emission trading scheme just recently. So they are moving with a big addition to carbon markets around the world in Brazil. And this is also something which, as the EU, we see as a very significant momentum. Based on our experience, putting the price on carbon and being able to use the revenues of this pricing into decarbonization is probably the most efficient way of achieving our climate objectives. So we hope that on the way to Belém, we will see many more processes for carbon markets. Both at the national level in the governments, but also under Article 6 proliferating, and that we will be able to take stock of that progress. To conclude, we are now entering the end of the hottest year in history of humanity. So we are on the verge of warming of 1.5 degree Celsius, and I think that if I borrow the term from COP28, the North Star of 1.5 degrees Celsius is upon us, and I think that we should also use the upcoming festive period, of course, to relax, to gain force, to reflect on how the next year will look, and also to think how we can get closer to where we need to be with the climate action. And that's a common homework for all of us, and for the EU. We are very eager to work with all the partners on moving towards Belém as another successful milestone for the climate multilateral action. Thank you for inviting me, and all the best to Athens.
Thank you very much, dear Jan, for this thorough presentation, and for sharing with us your first-hand views on COP29 and on the perspectives towards COP30. As you have correctly pointed out, the biggest challenge humanity is currently facing is the climate crisis. And unfortunately, the climate crisis is exacerbated because of the wars. We have more and more wars. This is to be deplored. And of course, this is a spillover effect that increases the emissions, the CO2 emissions, but also emissions of other dangerous, let's say, substances and gases which lead to a spillover effect, boosting the climate crisis. This is something we need really to keep in mind, and possibly in Belém there should be also a declaration on the impact of the wars on climate, as heating nuclear power plants. Thanks God this hasn't happened, but there was a threat, or other, let's say, energy plants can further increase the effects of the climate crisis. I would like now to fly, as Jan has mentioned, to Belém, and give the floor to Mr. Pedro Cardoso, who is the Minister Counselor of the Embassy of Brazil to Athens. But before doing this, please join us. I would like to inform you, and I hope that Jan will be able to make it, that in September we are planning to organize as a Circular Economy and Climate Institute a mega conference here in Athens entitled Circular Gaia Symposium, which will be a holistic conference covering climate, energy transition, climate neutrality, environment, blue economy, digital economy. You are all most welcome, and I hope Jan will be able to join us physically during this 3 days conference, which will be held in Athens. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you, Mr. Kremlis, for the invitation. Thank you it's a pleasure to be here at the EPLO. I'm going to be speaking a little bit about Brazil's perspective on the COP29, and also the road towards the COP30, which, as you all know, will be held in Belém. First of all, I'd like to thank the ambassador and thank Azerbaijan for its leadership and for the outcomes that were produced. This is extremely important because our aim, our goal in Brazil is that the COP30 could be a kind of an inflection point in our climate negotiations, in our climate meetings, to move from negotiation towards implementation. We've been negotiating for decades now, and I think we have a very rapidly shrinking window of opportunity to do something about this problem, and it's high time to get to implementation. So, as has been mentioned here before, clearly in COP29, the biggest hurdle was financing and the new collective quantified goal that was adopted. So I'll speak a little bit about how we saw that negotiation unfolding. As always, with the issue of financing, there was a lot of polarization between developed and developing countries, but also in this case, in this particular case, even sometimes amongst developing countries. Developed countries wanted to condition the elevation of the NCQG to the inclusion of some emerging countries, emerging economies. Developing countries pointed out the risk of violating Article 9 of the Paris Accord, which stipulates obligatory contributions from developed countries and voluntary ones from developing countries that are in a position to do so. The developing countries also pointed out that climate financing should be comprised predominantly of grants and concessional loans in order not to lead to additional pressure on their public debts. The current situation that we have, in which climate financing occurs mostly through the mobilization of resources under market conditions, from our point of view, from the point of view of developing countries, definitely hampers the ambition in our countries. Within the group of developing countries, we also saw a cleavage with regard to the notion of a minimum level of resource allocation for the most vulnerable countries, mainly the small island developing countries. The solution that was found was to include a paragraph committing efforts to triple by 2030 the annual disbursement of resources from funds comprised by the financial mechanism of the Paris Accord, which includes the GEF, the Global Environment Fund, the GCF, the Green Climate Fund, as well as the Adaptation Fund, the LDCs Fund, and the Special Fund for Climate Change, all of which have rules for the minimum allocation per region. So that was a way to find a compromise there on that issue. And the other step, of course, was to achieving consensus on the NCQG from our point of view, was the adoption of a roadmap, Baku-Beleng, towards the 1.3 trillion that has been mentioned before. The initiative is going to result on a report that's going to be presented at the COP30, looking at forms of scaling up financing, including through the revision of subsidies, concessional instruments, and measures for creating fiscal space. Another issue that was also dealt with at the COP29, and which we see as particularly important going forward towards the COP30, is science and technology. And we see it as crucial, because if we need to move from negotiation to implementation, then the place of the technological issues, including the transference and strengthening of endogenous capacities in developing countries, has to be at the center of the agenda of the COP30. At the COP29, the G77 presented a proposal to institute within the scope of the technology implementation program an accelerator of implementation and a hub for national systems of innovation. The goal is to convert the technology needs assessments into concrete projects and to strengthen the research and development capacities of developing countries, while also looking at systemic barriers to the transference of technologies such as restrictive intellectual property regimes, as well as trade protectionism. This discussion is going to continue. There's already a meeting scheduled for the intersessional period. And our hope is that in Belém, we will be able to work to change the predominant approach, which we find a little bit concerning in technology discussions, which tend to position developing countries as mere receptors or consumers of solutions that are developed abroad, rather than as actors that are capable of research and development of technologies. Another issue that we see that has a lot of potential to be developed in the COP30 is the issue of bioeconomy. As has been mentioned before by the previous speaker, Brazil was presiding the G20 this year, and we had a successful meeting in November in Rio. And one of the initiatives that was taken under the Brazilian G20 presidency was to create a task group which developed a series of high-level principles on bioeconomy. These include the need to include indigenous peoples and local communities in this discussion, to contribute to the sustainable use of biodiversity and the fair and equitable sharing of its benefits, as well as advancing sustainable consumption and production patterns and efficient and circular use of biological resources. We hope that the adoption of these principles can serve as a catalyst for further discussions at the COP30. since I'm mentioning the G20, I'll mention another initiative that was also taken under the Brazilian presidency of that group, which was the Task Force on Global Mobilization Against Climate Change. And we thought that that produced particularly positive results because we managed to bring together the finance track of the G20 with the environmental track. So we had presidents of central banks, ministers of finance, ministers of foreign affairs, and ministers of environment sitting together. And that led to a rather high level of ambition with regard to financing. And we hope that this can also be an input for the COP30 that can help to move the discussion forward. And then last but not least, it was also mentioned by the previous speaker, it's our view that for any COP, especially the next COP, because there's a deadline for the presentation of NDCs by February, I believe, the success, in the view of public opinion, the success of a COP is always going to verge on the level of mobilization that the emitters can muster in terms of their contributions. So we really urge all countries to be as ambitious as possible in the presentation of their NDCs. Brazil has, as was mentioned before, already anticipated its NDC, which was presented during the Baku conference, and we're looking forward to seeing other countries come up with as much ambition as possible. So, Mr. Kremlis, once again, thank you so much. I'm very happy to know that we will be having another conference here. I'm eager to participate in that and to continue to engage in the build-up to the COP30. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cardoso. We are looking forward to coming to Belém, and I believe most of our distinguished speakers and audience will be coming to Brazil to join forces and to boost the efforts that have been initiated in Baku. I believe our request is more on mitigation, as you have said, probably more on finance and a stock-taking exercise on the NDCs, because the NDCs are for the countries to increase their level of ambition, but we expect also from the COP a higher level of ambition as regards mitigation. And of course, the advantage of Brazil in involving indigenous people and what we call ancestral intelligence will be extremely important to introduce the cultural dimension in COP30, as we would like culture to be a driver for climate action. Thank you very much, and I would like now, without ado, give the floor to Ms. Svetlana Zhekova. I know Svetlana from Brussels. We were together there. She was the environmental attaché in the permanent representation of Bulgaria. Subsequently, she became Minister of Environment in Bulgaria, a very successful one. And subsequently, she acted as Vice President of the UNFCCC Bureau for 2024 on the way to COP29, on the way to Baku, and co-chair of the Eastern European Group. I must say that Svetlana is the link between COP28, COP29, and COP30. So she will take us through this virtuous line from one COP to the other. Svetlana, I know that you have a lot to share with us. Please try not to exceed the 10 minutes. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, George. Do you hear me and see the screen? Because I think that I'm connected and sharing. Can you?
We can see the screen, okay.
Yes, and you can hear me. Okay, thank you very much, George, and the EPLO for this opportunity to share my experience with COP29. Indeed, I had the challenge and a pleasure to be co-chairing the Eastern European group for the last year when all these negotiations happened, and also be part of the, as part of the Eastern European group, also designating Azerbaijan as the host of COP29. It has not been an easy process. We all remember this, and I would like to take this opportunity to congratulate really the host of COP29 for the excellent organizations, despite the short term that they had to do that. So it's addressing Your Excellency Mammadov. On the negotiations itself, indeed, so much has been said before me on the outcomes from COP29 that I was really wondering whether to present the slides that I have prepared with a short information on the deliverables. I, of course, after all the main points that have been raised, I'm not going to go into more details. I would like to share just 2 slides in order to raise some different perspective of the outcomes from COP29. First, let me summarize. Yes, there were a lot of, just let me change the slide. There was a lot in terms of key outcomes: climate finance agreement, carbon market framework, global goal on adaptation that we have advanced in, and also, but also other outcomes that have targeted indeed more than 50 areas that are going to deliver in practice to implement these outcomes that we have agreed on. Because we can speak about financing the climate, we need to know what exactly have to be financed. So it comes with the goals and with the targets. We can speak about carbon market frameworks, and that we have agreed on that they will bring the private sector on the board, but we need to know what exactly this private sector will be willing to invest in and in which direction these investments have to be put. We can speak about adaptation, but we need to link it with the sectors and how the climate adaptation will be streamlined into the sectors, how these sectors could invest in both mitigation and adaptation to seek for mutual benefits. So all these things have been addressed actually in these additional pledges and commitments and declarations endorsed by the countries, by the business that COP29 deliver. I would like, in terms of the 3 main agreements that have been outlined: the climate financing, the climate carbon market framework, and global goal on adaptation, I would like to focus a little bit more on what, in addition to the quantifiable goal of financing these three agreements means. So first, the climate finance agreement. We have indeed agreed on tripling the global goal on financing by 2035. And we have delivered, after long negotiations, the Baku financial goal of 1.3 billion annually. But these were the figures behind the long negotiations and the agreements that had to be reached, as the previous speakers have mentioned, between the developed and developing countries. We had to get close together. And what was extremely important in the climate finance agreement that was reached is that it was not only the quantum, but in the decision, these contributors, these possibilities of enlarging the contributors base and to have more potential contributors on board, although voluntary, was agreed and put in the text. So This was the biggest breakthrough, I would say, equally important as the quantum that we have agreed on, tripling and the 300 billion and also the 1.3 billion annually, because these figures would not mean anything if we didn't agree on these possibilities for the countries to contribute on voluntary basis for achieving these goals. Another important thing that has to be linked with the agreement on the quantum and on these figures is that they were agreed on a concrete goals. And these concrete goals are linked to the 1.5 degrees NDCs, development of the NDCs aligned with the 1.5, and also decent enabling conditions that will help the developing countries to absorb all this financial flow, because this is equally important. The money could be there, but if you don't have the enabling conditions, and if you don't have the goals, the right goals towards channeling these financial commitments, then the figures would not mean anything. So these are two important sub-goals that were adjusted into the text of the climate finance agreement that were of extreme importance, and we need to think about them as well as a big achievement. The same goes for the carbon market framework. It was indeed an historical achievement after 1 decade of negotiations on the so-called Article 6 rulebook. But the important thing is here that what it brings. Yes, it's clear that this agreement will bring the private business on board, but the UN-approved standards that are going to be applied for the global carbon markets and for the carbon credits is what will attract this private investment in all the developing countries and drive ambition, not only just being an offset mechanism. So also what was agreed around the financing mechanism, around the carbon market framework, was equally important as the figures and the words. The same goes for the global goal on adaptation. I started with that. It's an extremely important step ahead. Jan also mentioned this, and it's important because it will really address the local people, it will address the regions, it will address the communities. What is the side effect of this global goal on adaptation, if I could use this word, is that it targets, it's not one global goal. It's actually, these are 11 goals. 4 of them are for enabling conditions of climate adaptation plans, but the other 7 concerns concretely the sectors. So the water, health, agriculture, food security, biodiversity, infrastructure, and cultural heritage. So we have some concrete agreements there, some concrete directions there to go ahead and to implement and to channel this money that we have agreed upon. So without further speaking on these particular outcomes, because they are clear, I just want to emphasize once again the side effects agreements that we have reached around speaking on the concrete figures for financing or a framework for carbon market, which is another indirect financing mechanisms for climate actions. And this is being said, I would like to make the link between the goals and the deliverables that the presidency troika is going to share. A lot has been said by the two ambassadors, of course, and the previous speakers, how important it is, this link, and it's for the first time that we are applying this in the UNFCCC negotiations, this troika approach, and it was quite a good achievement established at COP29, at COP28 in Dubai. It enables, basically, the troika approach enables to reach agreement on such a difficult negotiations as the financing negotiations, which was the goal at COP29 in Baku. This financial framework agreement, I believe we wouldn't be able to achieve it if we didn't have the UAE, the United Arab Emirates consensus on the roadmap towards delivering on the 1.5, and if the COP28 presidency did not acknowledge the first global stocktake alarm on the climate crisis. Only these goals, setting up the framework of these goals, enabled the reaching the Baku financing agreement, because at Baku, we as parties, because it's not the presidency that is delivering, they are leading, but actually this is the parties that have to deliver. So on the basis of these goals, because they were agreed already, and towards mission 1.5, and the roadmap was already agreed, that's why we were able to link the negotiations on the climate financing with these goals. And this is how Baku was able to deliver backup financing to back up this ambition, not anything else, but this particular ambition, and agree on the carbon market mechanisms, which will bring the private business on board, etc. So these links were extremely important. That's why, as Jan said, we in the EU were a bit disappointed in terms of not paying enough attention to the mitigation element. But here, in my thinking, is that here is where the troika comes into play, and this is why the troika presidency approach for the UNFCCC is so important. As the distinguished ambassador before me mentioned, they are waiting in Brazil, actually, and they are getting ready to accelerate the implementation of the 1.5 degree aligned NDCs. And the countries, let's see first the countries what we will deliver, because for some of us, we are in preparation, we are quite advanced. There are others that haven't started. So let's see first what we will deliver, and provide to the Belém and COP30 presidency in order to accelerate the implementation. And we are also expecting from this perspective, from climate adaptation perspective, from also biodiversity perspective, and links between all the sectors, we would be expecting COP30 in Belém to prioritize actions against deforestation and forest degradation, Amazon forest, but not only, of course. So with this, maybe fruits for thought about how important the troika approach in the UNFCCC negotiations is, I would like to conclude with maybe a final remark that a lot has been said about the agreement in the agreements reached in Baku, also at COP28 before. But as we like to say in the international negotiations, the best agreement is the one that leaves all parties a little bit unhappy. So let's conclude that the COP29 negotiations and agreements on the financial goal has left everybody a little bit unhappy in the room after 2 sleepless nights, but it also opens enormous opportunities that we should not miss. We as parties, because we are all living in a common home, which is our planet Earth, and we have to deliver. And let's not rely only on the presidencies to deliver. They rotate among the regional groups, but let's help the presidency to deliver. And in COP30 as the next ones. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, dear Svetlana. Dear colleagues, I can assure you that Svetlana didn't sleep for 3 nights. And she has contributed a lot to the positive outcome. We say in Greece, the better is the enemy of the good. And we have something very good. So it's always good to have a higher level of ambition. And we hope that through this connection between the 3 COPs, Svetlana has illustrated the links and how we can build stone by stone this architecture that we need to protect our planet. Dear colleagues, I believe we now deserve a good coffee. I propose with melomakarona, because of the period of the year. I propose that we have a 10 minutes coffee break. I'm sorry that we cannot send you cookies, Svetlana and colleagues in Brussels and Monica, but hopefully I will bring them when I will come to Sofia soon. So 10 minutes coffee break. Thank you.
Very welcome. Thank you.
We are now moving to the second panel of our event, which is entitled The Business Sector and the Energy Transition. As already mentioned, COP29 has reached some important conclusions as regards the business sector, namely the Article 6 achievement, which is a very important one, as well as the other declarations, which are very relevant for the business sector. We have with us Konstantinos Hatzifotis in person and 2 other distinguished colleagues, personalities, Mrs. Monika Staniseva, founder of the Green Transition Forum, connected from Sofia, Bulgaria. Are you there, Monika?
Yes, I'm there.
Fantastic, fantastic. And Mr. Gianni Chianetta, the chair of Greening the Islands Foundation and board member and secretary of the Global Solar Council. I will start with Mr. Konstantinos Hatzifotis, who is the EU Affairs Manager of Motor Oil, but he has also another important hat as regards hydrogen, green hydrogen. He will probably say something on that. What I wanted to say is that in relation to Article 6, if the business sector wants to gain carbon credits, they have to invest in renewable energy sources and also in carbon capture storage. And in that respect, I think that Motor Oil is a pioneering company in not only in the renewable energy sources, the traditional ones, but also in the green hydrogen. Therefore, I will, without ado, give the floor to Konstantinos to share with us their views. They were present in COP29, so he can make the connection with COP29 and with what Motor Oil is doing with a view to their energy transition. Kostas, the floor is yours.
Dear Mr. Kremlis, dear Yorgo, thank you very much for the invitation and the honor to be today here among so distinguished personalities. To begin with, something that it has been already mentioned, our world is experiencing significant geopolitical challenges and persistent economic uncertainty. Crises have become the new regularity. Crisis in financial sector, then the migratory crisis, afterwards the COVID crisis, in between the climate crisis together with the geopolitical crisis in Ukraine, in Middle East, and what next? Probably water crisis. In our country here in Greece, we start seeing the first, really vivid examples of what could the future bring when what is not raining due to climate crisis. And also food crisis that's not far away. So I would say that our region, the place where our company, our mother company Motor Oil, our group of companies of Motor Oil Group, is operating the last more than 50 years, is affected by escalating conflicts, escalating crises in the wider region. So it's directly impacted by these situations. Specifically in the energy sector, we are faced with a very difficult equation. From the one side, the reply that we need to give urgently to climate crisis, environmental sustainability, but on the other side, you have the increasing need for affordable and secure energy. So for us, for Motor Oil, the only path for the future is a stable, affordable and secure energy present, alongside with an ambitious transition program. The drive level of this transition will come from those who are able, but also flexible, to adapt to these situations and challenges. Therefore, we promote projects aiming first at enhancing the energy security of the country, decreasing the cost of energy, and third, gradually decreasing our emissions. We are spending until 2030 1.5 billion euros towards the resilience and enhancement of our traditional operation in order to ensure a smooth and stable transformation. And this is part of a 4 billion euro investment plan, a cornerstone initiative aiming to lead our transition towards a more energy sustainable future in southeastern Europe. I want to mention that between 2019 and 2023, Motor Oil has invested almost 900 million euros in traditional activities and 930 million euros in new activities. That shows the balance that we need to keep between traditional operations that provide affordable energy to people, but also investing in the future in areas like renewable energy, circular economy, and new types and new technologies for energy. We are committed to reduce our CO2 emissions by 2030 by 30% and achieving a net zero by 2050. Therefore, we are actively focusing our, refocusing our oil and gas portfolio on projects with low carbon emissions, while also expanding into renewable electricity, alternative fuels, and as I said, the circular economy. So, regarding energy stability and energy security, in order to continue provide products that most of us need, like gasoline, petrol, for our daily life, and this should not be taken for granted. We remember that 2-3 years ago, when the Ukraine crisis was out there, we were listening from politicians across Europe that we should prepare our heavy pullovers in order to have
to be resilient
heating
for winter.
in our, yes, exactly, in our homes. So this is not far away, and nobody can guarantee that this time will not come back. So for us, energy security is a key aspect of the investments that we are currently making, but also we're trying to make our refinery more energy efficient. We try to digitalize it and also to invest on new technologies like carbon capture. We are one of the few refineries in Europe that we have managed to secure a very big amount of money from the Innovation Fund, the European Innovation Fund, 127 million euros, in order to install a carbon capture system in our refinery. And this has a twofold impact. First is to be able to decrease our overall emissions of about 1/4, that is 500,000 tons per year. And then to use part of this CO2, and together with another project that is also emblematic for Greece, for Southeastern Europe, the construction of the largest electrolyzer in the area, that is 30 megawatts, to produce synthetic methanol, a new fuel that we believe, and we hear that it will be one of the 2-3 technologies to be used for the decarbonization of the shipping sector. Together with this, we are investing a lot, as I said, in hydrogen. We believe that hydrogen can serve as a fuel itself, probably in the transportation sector, in heavy-duty vehicles, but also as a carrier to take us to next generation fuels. I refer to synthetic methanol, but there is also sustainable aviation fuels that we know that the European Union has enforced certain targets to be met by the sector in the next decade. And we see that hydrogen plays a pivotal role in order to produce this kind of fuels. Together with the project I refer to, CCS and the hydrogen, we're also developing a really innovative project that is Triiris. It's a hydrogen valley, so-called, where we're trying to bring together different players from the Greek market who either have the technology or want to try to have pilots of hydrogen usage in their current operations, or they want to study the use of hydrogen. And this valley got a prize a few days ago in Brussels as the best hydrogen valley in Europe for 2024. Then we move to, let's say, electricity. Electricity can be produced by 2 ways currently in Greece, 3, but one is phasing out, lignite. Currently we have natural gas. We are building currently in Komotini a really novel CCGT infrastructure to produce 800 megawatts of electricity together with Terna. And then we have heavily invested the last 5 years in renewables. We are currently operating 837 megawatts of renewable energy, mainly 95% from wind. And we have a pipeline of projects to arrive to 2 gigawatts by the end of the decade. And there we are also developing a lot of solar renewables. Needless to say that our company is the second largest producer of renewable energy in Greece, but after the recent developments, the first Greek-owned company. And the third part is circular economy. We also invested a lot the last 2-3 years through acquisitions of important companies like Verd. Verd owns a biorefinery in Volos. It has a subsidiary, Prasino, who is the largest collector of used cooking oils in Greece. And together with this, we also acquired Elector, a very big company in waste management. And this all moves towards the direction of making the best out of managing waste, but also paving the way to use waste to produce energy. As a conclusion, and to connect what I have told you with the targets that are being set by COP29, by the by the EU targets, by the Paris Convention, is that we really believe in the transition, but we believe in a more balanced transition. We cannot leave behind those that cannot afford cheap energy. We cannot leave behind those that are not ready to use electric cars. They are not ready to use hydrogen. They are not ready to use these new technologies. But at the same time, we cannot deny that climate crisis is present and we need to adapt. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Konstantinos. Your company your group will obviously have a lot of carbon credits. So you will be one of the important traders on the carbon market. And I do believe that your share of renewables, including hydrogen, will increase further in the future. The hydrogen valley is extremely important, and we would be very happy to develop a joint project between Greece and Bulgaria, a joint hydrogen project, which could be a PCI, a project of common interest, to be supported by the European Union. I know that you have something in mind, and that there have been discussions with the Bulgarian authorities. We hope that once things in Bulgaria will be settled, we will be able to have a thorough discussion in that respect, and that gives me the possibility to make the best transition. In Greece, we would say centram gol for the Greek friends, to the next speaker, Mrs. Monica Staniseva, who is the founder of the Green Transition Forum. I had the pleasure and privilege to be a speaker in the last Green Transition Forum events in Sofia, the last 2 years, also in Baku, where the Green Transition Forum has organized 3 very important panels with prominent speakers on the Green Transition Forum. And as I often say, the Green Transition Forum has become an institution for Southeast Europe, and we are looking forward to your participation next year. I'm sure Monica will say more on that. Without ado, I would like to give her the floor, and I have a question for you, Monica, which in reality will be the topic of your presentation. What do you see as the most significant outcome of COP29 for the business sector, and how does this influence the global energy transition, and what you are doing in your green energy, your forum to promote this energy transition in Southeast Europe? The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, dear George. I'm very happy and privileged to be part of this conversation. I find it really a very crucial moment to try to sum up and to try to reflect on the findings of COP29, and especially to target those findings to the impact of the business sector. But first, let me congratulate all the previous speakers for the very interesting insights that they have been given on COP29, and I've been listening very carefully. Greetings from Sofia. So, Your Excellencies, distinguished speakers, and dear like-minded friends, allow me to say this as well. It is really a privilege to be part of this conversation, and I think Green Transition Forum, which I had an experience to found and to chair for 5 consecutive years, is trying actually to become a platform for dialogue between institutions on the European level, national authorities, but also businesses, experts, and communities. Because what I believe and what we as a team believe is that it is not possible to have successful green transformation, which is a must for all of us, without having heard opinion for everyone who is involved in this process. So you cannot have regulations which are working only for the sake of regulations. You cannot have a business interest without, thinking about the public consequences and the consequences and the cost of those businesses for the climate as well. So we have to find this, we call it green consensus, which is important. So back to your question about the most important and significant outcomes of COP29 for the business sector, I would like to start with saying that COP29 was a very important moment in solidifying a global consensus on key milestones for the energy transition. And for the first time, I would say the businesses are having a roadmap that aligns international policy frameworks with corporate action. And this creates much needed level of clarity and confidence for long-term investments, because we all know that unless we have a clarity and predictability, the businesses are not doing well. So this is a need, something that we need to have. So the alignment between policy and the private sector action is a game changer. So this was achieved on this COP29. It is important, and it is enabling businesses to plan for the future without the uncertainty or fragmented policies that we have been witnessing so far. So it's important really to understand what the outcomes of the COP29 are. So let me start first of all with the scaling up of carbon markets. The previous speaker has been giving a lot of information about this, and I would like really to say that the agreement to streamline international carbon trading mechanisms under Article 6 is a significant outcome, because efficient and fair carbon markets will drive private investment into decarbonization. And we cannot have a successful global green transformation without motivating private capital to participate. So this is really very crucial, which has been achieved on COP29, and it applies particularly to the hard-to-abate industries. Businesses now have, I would say, greater incentives to innovate in low-carbon technologies, turning emission reductions into their competitive advantage. So secondly, there is another very important finding, outcome. Actually, I didn't hear the previous speakers to point on this, but to me it is important, and this is that decarbonization of supply chains has become mandatory, and the deadline is by 2035. There is enough time for businesses to prepare, but it brings on the table everything which is important. We are talking about like ESG, other important policies, and it means that businesses will need to reimagine their partnerships, their logistics, and procurement, so to meet those standards. And it was a topic that was being discussed for a long time, but now it is not a future ambition anymore. It is a today reality for the business sector. And to me, COP29 has sent a very clear message to the businesses, and it is that if they want to be successful in the future, And if they want to be making, if they want to grow, they need to shift their business mindsets, I would say, because the future belongs to those who are understanding that the sustainability is not just about compliance. It is a core business strategy for resilience, for growth, and also it can be turned, and it must be turned into a competitive advantage. Also, one of the findings was about, and outcomes was about focus on technological innovation. And yes, it is true that COP29 reinforced the role of innovation, emphasizing on the need for accelerated development and deployment of cutting-edge technologies like green hydrogen, advanced energy storage, and of course carbon capture. What I would say about also about the opportunities for public-private collaboration, those are important outcomes as well. And this is the moment for companies to be engaged actively with policymakers, leveraging those partnerships to drive systematic change. And as a conclusion for all this, I would say that the businesses that seize the opportunities from COP29 will be the ones who will be defining the industries of tomorrow. George, maybe back to you if you have some other questions.
Dear Monica, thank you so much for this very to-the-point presentation. Grateful to you. Unfortunately, time is flying. And as
to be very short,
yes, yeah, you did it. You really did it perfectly, and you have made my life easier. I would like to thank you for that, and invite. I know that you didn't have time to mention this, but on your behalf, I will invite the distinguished speakers and audience here present to your next event in Sofia in June next year. Do you have the dates already?
Yes, we have a dates. Thank you so much for this. We have a dates. The dates will be between 16th and 20th of June. We are expecting to have, as usual, presence of the commissioners, some of the new commissioners of the European Commission. Also, we will have for surely confirmed Daron Acemoglu, who is a Nobel Prize winner, the professor from MIT, presenting to be presented and given the keynote speech at our event. And also we will have Enrico Letta, who is the author of one of the most important reports commissioned by the European Commission on the future of competitiveness of the European Union. And I believe it's going to be a very engaging and interesting conversation. Usually we have more than 3,500 people participating at our event. It takes 3 days, and many companies all over the region, and on the C-level, their representative CEOs are coming to do a good networking, to participate to our panel discussions, and also to have important one-to-one on bilateral or bilateral meetings to meet the important policy and decision makers as well. So you are all welcome. For me, it will be a pleasure and honor to host you at our event.
Thank you. Thank you very much, dear Monica. Without ado, I would like to give the floor to the voice of the islands, as I call him, Gianni Chianetta, the president of and chair of the Greening the Islands Foundation. Gianni, we were together in Baku. You have been extremely active in promoting the voice of the islands. What can you share with us in terms of the energy transition of the islands in promoting renewable energy sources for the non-connected islands, and the relevant financing. I know that a lot of representatives of island states which are threatened because of the rise of the sea level were there. Delos, a World Heritage and the prominent Greek island, Professor Moropoulou will refer to it, is threatened because of the rise of the sea level. So in a nutshell, as time is flying, can you share with us, let's say, the findings of the COP in relation to greening the islands and boosting the effort for not only mitigation, because the role of the islands for mitigation is limited. What they need more is to build resilience. So in that respect, their transition in that respect is even more important. The floor is yours. And please be short, because as we reach the end, we will penalize the remaining, and I'm sorry for that, the remaining speakers.
First of all, thank you very much, George, for your invitation. Thank you to EPLO. I'm very glad to have a long historical cooperation with you and this effort to promote a solution for climate change and circularity and for the islands. Indeed, really, I would like to be there next time, indeed. Generally speaking, I'd like to say, referring to Baku, also having several hats anyway, also in the Global Solar Council and the Global Alliance for Sustainable Energy, that Baku happened this year, in the year where we reached almost 42 billion tons of CO2 of emissions, and also we reached the hottest year ever anyway, and in many regions like the Mediterranean, we passed very much the 1.5 degrees increase in the temperature. And despite that, the COP29, even if indeed was a step forward to compare to COP28, was not a turning point as we were hoping. Indeed, the 300 billion annual target, the new collectively quantified goals, is an achievement, but is far from the 1.3 trillions needed and requested by developing countries. And going to islands, the voice of islands were not listened. Anyway, we have seen a paragraph and chapters in the final document to be completely cancelled in the last one, and there was a request for seeds of oasis of 39 billions of these 300 billions annual target, and to have a clear split sub-target, let me say, that was requested and then was, let me say, cancelled. So disappointing from the island that sense. That on the, as you mentioned, as Green Data Foundation, together with UNDESA, the Division of Sustainable Development Goals on the Department of Economic and Social Affairs of UN, and the Global Renewable Alliance, joining all the global industry. Once again, we did bring at COP the 100% Renewables Islands Initiative, because islands can be laboratory of innovation, can be laboratory of solution for climate change, and despite they are the first affected by climate change, can be indeed a model of on technology, on policy and finance for the climate change. So despite that, let me say we are quite disappointed. And what indeed we need, we hope, looking at Belen, is indeed NDCs more aligned with the 1.5 degree target, a finance mobilization increasing this 300 billion annual target, and having finally a clear split and sub-target for islands, we'd like to have more clarity between the loss damage fund and the new collective quantitative goal. There was a request to be the loss and damage to be part of the new climate finance goal. And I think a lot need to be done in order to make clear the relationship. The advancement on the loss and damage funds was very little on that sense. Very good, let me say, the advancement, the regulation of the Article 6, because the islands can benefit of investment from developing countries in seeds in islands thanks to these carbon markets. So we are keen to start implementing and having some case studies in that sense. Something we would have liked more, and really will be our stress looking to Belen, thinking about a special focus on grid storage, and indeed also for the islands and beyond. There was not, and we really we want to see in Belen a more clear declaration of a phasing out of fossil fuel, from fossil fuel. We have also in the island where, of course, even the renewables, of course, the technology is more expensive. The many islands globally are still utilizing fossil fuel with a cost which is 2-3 times higher, and there is no sense to keep going with diesel in the islands while the technology is mature and is there, and so a clear direction in that sense from COP in Baku didn't happen, but we need to really work for Belen. In our target, looking at Belen, we are trying to green the islands to join the voice, as you said, even more at COP, and your continued support, George, is very much welcome, as you did also, and you are doing even now, to bring to have the islands, to join the islands, maybe having an island pavilion. Why not? Is to represent the voice of islands, because islands together and seeds itself count more than one big country. And let me say, islands together can contribute to more than 1 terawatt of renewables, contributing to the global target, if we consider on not only project on the land, but also the off-grid project, and so the off-grid of wind and solar and so on. So in conclusion, in a few words, and thanks, I think, George, this event is very important, because we need to reflect on what happened in Baku, what went good, what didn't work, and because if we want to have achievement at COP, looking at Belen, we don't need to wait the last months or to be at COP. We need to work from now, in December, immediately after this COP, in order to create and to work with all the bodies, with all the governments, with all the technical people that will prepare the governments for the COP. And this event is very timely, because next year we will all countries need to define the new NDCs. And so we need to really encourage countries to be more ambitious in the NDC. And last, I'd like to conclude with one point regarding the fact that we need to move from global to regional. We need to have regional targets. As you know, George, in the Greek pavilion together, we did bring with the Mediterranean dialogue on sustainable energy and climate, and that is Green the Islands is managing the secretariat. promoting also with the UFN and RICRI, and I know EPLO is one of the signature of the open letter for the Mediterranean. We did bring in the Greek pavilion with the Greek government promotion of a regional cooperation to reach a regional target in the Mediterranean to contribute to the global target. This is something that was at the attention of COP. We need to make stronger looking at Belen. And I know that, George, you're really on the Mediterranean, you are very active, and we need to work together to really, to really have Belen as a turning point in the progress in combating climate change.
Thank you very much, Gianni. I know that you have been extremely active in Baku. We had also a very successful side event in the Greek pavilion. I do believe that we need to strengthen further our voices, to join forces with the view to Belém, for the islands to have their own slot on the official agenda of this COP30, and there is a clear connection with the culture, because each island is both a cultural and natural heritage of our planet. And in that respect, if some islands of the Pacific and of the Indian Ocean are threatened and might disappear in the future, we need to preserve them in several capacities, including the cultural dimension, which is very prominent. So thank you very much for that, Gianni. I'm happy to welcome Dimitris Kolias, who is an energy transition strategist and currently the advisor to the Greek Deputy Minister of Energy, Alexandras Doukou. He was in Baku from the beginning till the end, an active key player. We were also together last year in Dubai and the year before in Sharm el-Sheikh, and hopefully we will be together in Belém. So, Dimitri, in a nutshell, what Greece has brought and what are the lessons learned for us? I know that we are promoting green islands. We are a pioneering country in that respect. I know that in terms of renewable energy sources, we have an extremely important record. So please, in a nutshell, share with us your views.
Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm very sorry for being late, but I think it's an opportunity to be really very fast. George, thank you very much, because I think that you have said everything. All I have to do is say that you said already that everything goes what is happening in Greece. Greece, I think, is functioning like a sandbox for good practices. We are designing good practices in Greece, and we are even exporting good practices, like greening the islands. We have islands like Halki, like Astipalea, like Tilos, like also Agios Evstratios. Everything is a good practice that everybody is talking about. Also being here, I think I'm here with a great respect, because being in such a building, I think Mrs. Moropoulou, I won't say more because you will find that I don't know many things about it. But
I'm not here as a professor. We are in the same chair.
Okay, that's great. But we're feeling that what we have to do about climate crisis is that we have to protect our planet, we have to protect our societies, our people, and definitely our heritage, our history, our buildings, our monuments. So, I won't tell you more things about COP29, but COP29 is called like the finance COP. COP29 was set to deliver a new climate finance deal. Almost about 300 billion euros was the outcome for mobilizing annually from the developing countries to the countries that are taking the lead. What I want to tell you is about Greece and what the Hellenic Republic has done this year. Last year was the first time that the Hellenic government has participated in a COP with our own pavilion. From the very first moment that we were planning it, we were working together with George Kremlis for co-organizing events. Because we have organized the pavilion of the Greek government, but we needed specialists on climate preservation, on the planet preservation. Prime Minister Mitsotakis addressed the plenary session on November 13, emphasizing the countries in the European continent's efforts towards a type of energy transition that our citizens can accept and our companies can afford. Earlier, he attended the opening of the Greek pavilion at COP29, where he underlined that Greece has reduced emissions by about 45% compared to 2005, adding that the shift to clean power generation technologies is generating new investment opportunities in the countries. Greece is gradually becoming an energy exporter, emphasizing the importance of more extensive network of interconnections with other European countries. The Greek Pavilion hosted more than 45 events focused on coordinated climate action, energy transition, and strengthening of energy security, and a lot of high-level panels. So I think that we have done quite a few things already. And stay tuned because better things are coming on COP30 that is already loading. Hope we're going to welcome this together. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dimitri. And let me say that there are two fronts for us for COP30, the islands, and Jan is there, we will join forces, and the cultural dimension. Tonia Moropoulou is with us to promote this together with the prominent speakers who will speak in a while during her panel. I do believe that we are setting good practice that needs to be also promoted as we are a driver and Greece is becoming a green hub in Southeast Europe. And in that respect, not only thanks to the green energy that we will bring from Egypt, but also the Eurasia cable, thanks to all the investments on renewables, and hopefully the spatial planning for renewables will be developed because we need this. This will be the real win-win. And as I'm saying about this grid, the grid is extremely important, but also storage. And when I'm thinking about the results of the American elections, because a lot of the previous speakers are wondering and they are trying to look into their crystal ball to see, will Mr. Trump appoint a special climate envoy? Will he be as ambitious as the previous one? What will he do about climate, etc.? There is one win. Ideally, we would wish to have a double win, a win-win, or a triple win. The one win is Elon Musk, who will be a strong actor in the new American administration for storage and for electromobility and for critical raw materials. These are extremely important elements for circular economy, for bioeconomy, and I do believe that the United States will not be linked to the previous let's say, Trump attitude that there is no climate change. These are cyclical phenomena that happened every thousands of years. I do believe that now, as the business driver is there and is a strong one, this will prevail. And a last point, as in this COP, the private sector has to contribute a lot of money. If Elon Musk put the money in his pocket, as we say in Greece, and he convinces Amazon and the other big American companies to contribute with what they can contribute. If they want to contribute, a big part of the problem and the support will be solved, because it is really a pity to find out that the loss and damage fund has only 750 million euros. This is really a very symbolic amount, while the real needs are billions, and in that respect, this is something that we need to acknowledge. So thank you very much, Dimitri. Without ado, I would like now to give the floor to the chair of the next panel, Professor Antonia Moropoulou, a very prominent professor of the National Technical University of Athens, who is also the vice chair of the Technical Chamber of Greece, a very important role, and who will be chairing the next panel, a very important panel on the cultural dimension of the COPs.
Thank you very much, dear George. You know, we are both from Rhodes, so we have a common history since our childhood. But
we are still very young.
We are still very young. However, I'm honored for your invitation to chair this unique panel, which is raising some issues that are determining the future of COP. I want to raise the issue of culture-based climate action. And it's not only me. That's the voice of COP29 and of ministerial meetings on the level of culture and cultural heritage. And I was astonished when I was reading what you, Princess Dana Firaz, said, stating that culture potentially has such a capacity to promote all the sustainable development issues towards combating climate change, that we really need to go to this direction. Without this direction, we could not integrate our actions for climate crisis. And also, when I was going through the conclusions of COP29, and when I've heard Svetlana 1 hour ago to say that implementation for Belém is posing on the table the issue of national determining contributions, which need to integrate and concisely promote in practice all the plans for 1.5 centigrades, then I was thinking, apart from this win-win outcome of the Baku COP29, which is ensuring financing for the green transition, don't we need a planning, an integrated planning for local development in order to make it sustainable? I remember 40 and a little bit more years ago, when we were very young, that among other European and international people, we took the initiative to launch the concept of sustainable development at the UN, UNESCO, OECD, EU, etc., EU by that time. And it is after 40 years that we are implementing, and we are urgently realizing the need to implement, I would say, these policies. So we are late for more than 40 years. But we cannot go to a further delay. We have to act right now. And as I was going through the outcomes, I was understanding that nature-based solution or environmental integrity, which is a prerequisite for the 1.5 target for the next Belém COP, I understood that it couldn't be reached out if it wouldn't be integrated to environmental and cultural heritage assets. Sustainable development requires the need to document, to modelize, and to promote both these local assets, environmental and cultural assets. Otherwise, we cannot go further. And islands, dear Mr. Chianetta and dear George, are having acted up to now as pilot cases, pilot areas, because they are isolated, in order to exemplify the power of this planning effort. Without this, we wouldn't come to safeguard the island's potential if we wouldn't safeguard the architectural heritage, the cultural heritage, and turning it into a development resource, because that's the new direction for tourism, to utilize these local assets. So I am hopefully believing that there is an end to Belém 30. And it is my great honor to give to our distinguished speakers the floor to present their case. Your Excellency, Princess Dana Firas, you as a UNESCO Goodwill Ambassador and FV ICOMOS are having the floor. We need to hear you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, George, for this kind invitation. It's been very interesting, actually, listening to the past two sessions and listening to people listing the achievements of COP29. And in my mind, rattling the thoughts of how it's all so interconnected with culture. So it's a pleasure for me to be here and to speak about something that I've been working very hard to try and push through the climate agenda over the past few years. I'll start by maybe saying a few words about why we're doing the work that we're doing, really. The sort of practice that we have been looking at, the data that we have been gathering, and the evidence that we have seen from throughout the world, from all regions of the world, has been that without the socio-cultural dimension, there is no climate action. How do you get people to change the way they think, to change the way they feel about the climate crisis? How do you get people to be convinced that they need to make very major shifts in the way they consume, in the way they produce, in the way they live their life, without reaching both hearts and minds and making arguments that don't just look wonderful on paper and in policies, but that actually touch people personally to start action on locally, translating local action into more global action. And so the idea of integrating culture and heritage into the climate agenda comes basically from the essential link that you need to make between policy and between implementation. The transition from policy to implementation is not going to happen without culture-based climate action. It will not happen. People will not make the changes that are incredibly painful and disruptive in their lives without the power, emotive power, to move it forward. We've seen examples everywhere on how culture, how heritage really transforms the way people feel about what matters to them, and how non-action can become serious, meaningful action. And so this was a very important and very eye-opening component of human behavior, basically, in human behavior sciences. But beyond that, in all of the evidence that we have looked at, we've realized that there is incredibly powerful practice, incredibly powerful knowledge, and learning that has happened over thousands of years of adapting to climatic conditions. Granted, they are not as extreme and as rapid and as urgent as we have today, but people have been adapting to climatic disruptions for thousands and thousands of years. This knowledge, these practices, day-to-day practices, this awareness of how you adjust to change in your natural environment that impacts your way of life, your traditions, your places of habitation, your relationship between yourself, your community, the natural world that you inhabit, and the built world that you inhabit as well. All of that is a product of years and years and years of tested practice, of learning, and of knowledge that many communities throughout the world have accumulated. Where is this knowledge in how we are approaching climate solutions today? And so part of it also is that this culture and heritage have a lot to bring to the table, meaningful, practical, effective solutions that have been tried and tested for many, many years, that work hand in hand with technological innovations, and the transfer of technology and science and learning, traditional science and learning, as well as the science and learning of universities and research institutes, etc. This marrying of both this of the science and learning of the practice and the theory has to happen for us to understand how communities can contribute to climate solutions. This goes to the core of building resilience, because when you build resilience, you're working with communities to strengthen their ability to adapt to change and to change their way of life, to mitigate change, and to thrive despite climatic disruptions. So all of it is uniquely tied to culture and heritage in ways that cannot be separated. And so, that in addition to the fact that climate change has, untold impact on cultural heritage sites, on landscapes, on traditions, ways of life, beliefs, all of that, and migration that may disrupt people's relationship and connection to land, to traditional sources of sustenance. All of that has a big place at the table in climate action and in the climate agenda. Plus, we are also an industry, culture and heritage. We are within ourselves an industry that needs to be greened, needs to move into the more circular green economic models. And we have a way to go as well. And we need to make that transition within our own spheres. But we also have a lot to contribute to transitions in our sphere and in other spheres, such as buildings, transforming buildings, using the energy in buildings, landscapes, the way practices, agricultural practices, fisheries. And so there's a lot to contribute to that conversation as well. So this is the start of why we felt it was imperative that the UNFCCC framework, as well as the COP framework, really looks at culture and heritage very seriously as one of the 3 pillars of climate action. So one would be finance. So we all, and COP29 was very important in building the argument and the process for finance, for climate. Number 2 is technology and technology transfer. So that these 2 are critical for effective climate action and building resilience. But number three would be the socio-cultural dimension, and believe strongly that just climate action, effective climate action, has to be built on these three foundations. It's not enough to look at finance and technology. The sociocultural dimension is critical. So in Sharm el-Sheikh was really the first time that we were able to bring this conversation to the decision-making level, to the policy level. And we held a ministerial in Sharm el-Sheikh, which was addressed by the COP president at the time. And it involved 5 ministers of culture, a minister of environment, a minister of water and irrigation at the time, the IPCC, a representative of small island nations, and UNESCO was present as well. And we tried to bring forward a policy document. So at Sharm el-Sheikh, the outcome of that ministerial meeting was the declaration, the Sharm el-Sheikh Declaration on Culture-Based Climate Action. And that declaration was actually distributed to many governments. We were incredibly honored when the Greek government responded immediately, made amendments to the declaration to reflect the work that has been done in Greece, and much of it was led by George and others. And we made the necessary amendments, and it was adopted by the government of Greece as well as other governments, including my own government, the government of Jordan. And it was, at the time, quite a significant accomplishment to move the conversation from the sidelines into the policy framework. We still were not able to engage as much as we wanted to with the UNFCCC framework, but it gave us the opportunity to move forward there and take it to COP28 in Dubai, where the topic really had a lot more traction than ever before. So the ministerial was much bigger. There were the involvement of the multilateral institutions was very significant in COP28. And then the policy outcomes were really very important, including getting cultural heritage recognized in the global goal on adaptation as one of the pillars in the global goal of adaptation. That for us was a major breakthrough. We wanted much more. Any campaign is much more ambitious than the final outcomes, because we were hoping that we would get some recognition in the NDCs, and that never happened. And so there was always this culture gap that we were trying to bridge in the work that we are doing. The good thing about Dubai as well is the adoption of the Group of Friends on Culture-Based Climate Action. So not only do we, as sort of civil society organizations, have been working and pushing for this, for the change within that framework, in partnership with multilateral organizations, but now we had an instrument through which we could impact national governments and really impact policies through the Group of Friends. It's chaired by the Emirates and by Brazil, mirroring this troika link between Brazil and Dubai and Belém going through Baku. And we took that into consideration to give ourselves also 2 years to achieve more ambitious policy objectives. And so we are now looking forward to Baku. We could not achieve the goals that we set for ourselves in Baku. We're looking forward to Belém, I mean, but in Baku we really could not achieve the goals that we had set for this campaign. The COP was focused on finance, and despite the fact that we lobbied incredibly hard to say this is an easy win for Baku, the ministerial, we had incredible support from the Minister of Culture, and were able to hold a ministerial in Baku. But beyond that, there was no impact on policy outcomes that came out of Baku. I personally felt that it was an incredibly missed opportunity. It could have been a brilliant win for COP29 to make significant progress on culture. It's not controversial. It's significant. It translates into all sorts of policy areas, all sorts of implementable action areas. And you know, Baku hosts, Azerbaijan hosts the Baku process. I mean, there's a lot of work on culture in Azerbaijan and recognizing the role culture plays in building peace, in building effective action. And so it would have been a brilliant opportunity to really push this agenda item forward, but it did not happen. So despite the fact that there was success in the objective, which was the finance, at the end of the day, how much of this finance is coming to culture and heritage? Without culture and heritage being recognized as an important pillar in the process, it's the support that will come to cultural heritage is negligible. It's minimal. You know, we have the little door through the global goal on adaptation, but it's not the same as recognizing culture and heritage as a major pillar for climate action. And that's a real pity, because that means the implementation strategies moving from policy to action is going to be, according to much of the research that we have done, much more laborious, much more difficult, and much less effective, and much less just. You know, we talk about island states, for example, and the loss and damage fund, but how do we measure, how do we value the loss of entire cultures if an island is impacted existentially by sea rise, by sea level rise? How do you value the loss of that culture? How do we as humanity suffer when an entire culture disappears? When an entire way of life no longer exists? When this really important knowledge that people have about handling climatic impacts on their daily life is no longer available for us to learn from, to understand, to work with. How do we value that? So where is loss and damage when it comes to culture and heritage? This is an enormous gap that still exists and that wasn't even tackled in Baku. It was not on the agenda. It was brushed over, if anything. And that, in my opinion, remains a very serious gap that needs to be addressed. So what, you know, even tourism, I mean, tourism was placed on the agenda in Baku, but without beautiful heritage sites, without beautiful natural sites, without music, without traditions, without wonderful culinary, tourism, there is no tourism. And so at the heart of the tourism agenda lies culture and cultural heritage. And even within that framework, it was barely mentioned. I mean, I had a contribution during the tourism ministerial, and I tried to focus on this. But in terms of a policy outcome, that remained inadequate, really, in the final outcome. And we were very sad we were working very hard to get a culture workshop request, a UNFCCC culture workshop request in the final decision, in the final outcome at COP29. And then the final decision was, they went back to having no final decision in COP29. And so we lost that opportunity, although we were set to have that language in the final in the outcome decision at COP. We tried very hard to get it in the mitigation work program when we lost the final decision, and in the negotiations for the mitigation work program, in draft 1 we had the language in there. In draft 2 it disappeared, and we tried to speak to almost every government. George knew that, he was there to say, we need to put this back on the agenda. And, they said the focus is going to be on finance. But, finance is great, but if you don't have a means through which finance can be used to prompt action that is, just effective to build resilience, among communities, we're still going to be suffering from practices that are going to contribute to climate change and not mitigate climate change. So we're looking forward to Belém. Lessons learned. We know we have to work much more actively on our advocacy as civil society organizations. We have to launch a broad campaign that can be and we're in the process of doing that actually, that can be very broad, very wide, very effective, that are global, that can include organizations, institutions, and individuals of high impact and high visibility that will champion this to put pressure on that side. But we also have to work very hard with national governments. And we have to use the group of friends, institutionalize the group of friends, strengthen the group of friends, and have a work program to enable us to get as many governments as we can on board to have their negotiators push for this agenda in Brazil. And we have to get the leaders at sort of in the opening session in the Leaders Summit to speak publicly about the importance of culture and heritage, and really bring that message, give that message a much higher profile publicly, and at the decision-making level, give it a much higher profile technically through the negotiators, and then work through the system to continue to support research, the development of indicators, benchmarks, evidence base, and to work with the UNFCCC to try and hold a workshop by June to begin to explore much more seriously on the impact of culture on climate solutions and climate action, and the impact of climate change on culture and heritage. And so it's a sort of a five-pronged approach that we are now that we've dusted ourselves off and relaunched our efforts to really see if in Belém we can make a more meaningful contribution to the policy agenda.
Thank you very much. It was a passionate advocacy for culture to become a base for climate action. And I would like to highlight two very important points from your position. First of all, we are speaking of the role of civil society. What the role of civil society will be if society is not inspired. Society facing the climate crisis is in horror, in desperation. Of course, the positive need for safety is promoting participation after informing society. But that's not enough. The actual force is an inspired society, and of course informed, but that's not adequate. And inspired society is a society with an identity. So cultural identity is a major force for the civil society to participate. And as I was working for some years in your neighborhood, dear Princess of Jordan, I mean working for the restoration of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem, I had the amazing experience that 3 billion of people keep in mind that only 2 billion are Christians. So we were working at the tomb of Christ, and 3 billion of people through the media were attending our work because they were affected by the message and the spirit of hope from the resurrection of Christ. What does it mean? And that was the reason that at this era of 2017, in this major point of conflict in Jerusalem, another light was coming from there. So this is very important. And the second point I would like to take out from your position, which is very important to me. You were speaking of lessons learned. Lessons learned through cultural heritage adaptation, through cultural heritage resilience. What does that mean? That we had a green economy, a green architecture, a green energy performance in history, which we have to reconsider in order to go to the modern green transition. And this is very important because we have to rediscover our past in order to ensure our future. So I would like to thank you very much because you are not only passionate, you are inferring with new dimensions this discussion. And I have the honor to invite Mr. Antonio Jesus Antequera Delgado as a General Subdirectorate for Coordination and Management of Cultural Assets, Ministry of Culture of Spain. And only this title is explicit of what we are going to hear. We are looking forward.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. And for me, it's a pleasure to be here with all of you, with all these distinguished speakers, with this audience. And thank you so much to the organizers, to the EPLO, and to Mr. George Kremlis. And for me, it's a pleasure. Next time, I hope I could go to Athens, to your venue, to your headquarters that are in a very beautiful place and a very beautiful site. So very, very near, no, of the Acropolis. So see you in a next time presentially. So, well, I want to say that I totally agree with the words that has explained the Princess Dana. I totally agree. I subscribe all the words. I think that it was greatly explained. And well, in my case, I'm going to highlight some points more specifically in the field of cultural heritage, but it's also in the same line. No, I think that we are also in the same line. Well, I think that why the cultural dimension is important in the COP. Well, in the last COPs, we have seen how culture cannot continue to be relegated to the background. I think that Princess Dana has mentioned the word that culture is the basis, from changing behaviors, for changing attitudes, and for changing the way of being. Now. In our planet, and how can we change these these habits that are having these effects. So I think that now, on the contrary, mitigation and adaptation policies must be based not only on culture but also in heritage. And heritage has a lot to say in this regard. Not only can it be added to mitigation strategies, for example, incorporating renewable energies in a harmonic and also in a orderly way into our heritage buildings, for example. And this is very important, because we can get a lot of inspiration for these buildings, these places, these assets. And we can use also them for joining the mitigation strategies, But also it has a lot to contribute in the field of adaptation. I think that our heritage is a vast catalog. I will say it's also the biggest catalog that we have in the field of adaptation. I think that it comprises all the traditional knowledge, all the ancient knowledge of all of our ancestors. So I think that it tells us how our ancestors have adapted to the environment, no, and to these changes. And now we need to go, no, to these sources. It's not about reinventing the wheel every day. No, we must learn from our past. No, so I think that it's very important to learn from this, because in the past we are going to find the keys to facing our future. No, I think that it's in the same line. In this regard, I believe, for example, that it's increasingly important to begin the working, no, on, for example, mapping out the risks to the cultural heritage of our countries, on the one hand, and on the other, to draw up catalogs of good practices based on traditional knowledge and to share this work internationally. I'm remembering, for example, the work that was presented in Baku by Professor Kartalis, the extraordinary work developed by the Ministry of Culture of Greece about the mapping of the risks, no, in Greece. So I think that it's very inspiring for the rest of the countries. At this point, I would like to highlight also the importance of the creation of the group of friends, no, on culture based on climate action, no, in the COP in Dubai. I think that it was a turning point and should be the international forum where these climate experiences can be shared. No? Because also in this group of friends, we can find UNESCO, for example, no? For example, Europa Nostra and a lot of institutions and organizations that are pushing forward internationally. It has been a great step forward from, for example, the COP in Glasgow, that it was not very far from here, no? Where culture appeared to be in a lesser extent. No, now we are talking about culture in a great level, but we must be ambitious, just in the same line of Princess Dana said, and we must continue pushing forward. I think that it will be very important the creation of a joint workshop on culture. I think that that must be the next step, to have a permanent working group, as happens, for example, with agriculture, mobility, smart cities, and so on. In this aspect, I want also to talk about the role of civil society. I think that the civil society, the role that can play is essential, fundamental. Heritage is no longer a top-down process, as it has been since the Enlightenment times, for example, no? But increasingly, it is a bottom-up process. And this is great news, I think, because civil society is more attached to the land than the public administrations. We have to say this, no? And they also tend to be ahead, no? Because they are more in the ground, we can say. And if civil society is concerned and mobilized for heritage, it will be a guarantee for its conservation. Many times, public administrations are limited, no, by the human and economic resources available. And that's why the conservation of heritage must involve all of us, administrations and also civil society. I think that one of the great successes of the group of friends is to include different associations and NGOs. I think that it's a very great point, that have been working on these issues for many years before. The work that they have been developing from them is very valuable. And I think that the synergies that are being created are going to be very fruitful and very helping, no, for all of us. So we have also to take into account the role of education, of heritage education. I think that we have culture-based, no, on climate action, but also we have to consider heritage education. For example, in Spain, we have a national plan on heritage education, and our maxim, our motto is, we only protect what we love, and we only love what we know. So I think that that's No, this appreciation of heritage by society is one of the great challenges that we have to face also. The work carried out in recent times is getting very good, and we must to continue along in this way. It's very important to implement these plans, these heritage educational heritage plans, and promote them from the COPs. We think, from Spain, that it will be very interesting and very important. So, and also these plans must also be present from the earliest ages, from in the schools, institutes, and so on. And what about the next steps? For example, well, from our point of view, and I think that probably we agree, culture and heritage must be one of the fixed axes of the COPs, of the future COPs. I think that they must be in the fixed agenda, just as mobility, energy sources, or financing that are already. At the COP in Dubai, a mention of culture and heritage was introduced for the first time. So, but we must not be satisfied only with that. We must go further. Unfortunately, as Princess Dana said, at this COP, there were not as many new steps as we have hoped regarding cultural heritage, but progress has continued. Slowly but surely, with the approval of the terms of the group of friends. So we have a foundational or a milestone in this case. The next step should be the joint workshop and further developing the presence of cultural heritage in the final declarations of future COPs. And well, if we try to imagine, and we are also in in the best scenario that we all can imagine. For example, some of the ideas that probably we can work together, or we can promote from the in the COPs could be some initiatives or some projects, like, for example, that the states parties also carry out or make maps of the threats that are risking their heritage, just as Greece has done, for example, because the heritage of each country is also and ultimately the heritage of all of us. As we have seen in the case of Notre Dame, for example, it's affecting all of us, these cases. Also, the resources that are invested in heritage education plans in schools, institutes, I think that will be some topic that could be addressed in future or in next COPs, for example. And also the promoting and the boosting of databases of good practices based on traditional knowledge that also has to be shared, shared between the countries. I think that it's also very important, as we have in the European Union, the implementation of national adaptation plans. I think that it's a key figure that it could be very interesting to promote at an international level, probably in the COP forum, for example, because we can and must learn from each other. Just as we don't have a planet B, there is no heritage B also. And if we are left without a planet, we will be left without heritage. So I think that many countries are advancing on similar points, and I think that it's very enriching the meetings of the group of friends in this extent, because we can see how we are all more or less in the same points. We are facing the same troubles, the same problems, like the human resources, economic resources, and so on. But I think in this case, the fundamental word is coordination I think, the coordination, and also the shared knowledge. I think that climate crisis demands global actions, but also, I will add, shared knowledge, because I think that it's one of the key elements. And in the case of Spain, we agree that the group of friends is going to be a turning point, and we are very illuminated, and we are sure that we are going to get a lot of good news from this group of friends, and we are going to share a lot of knowledge between all of us, because it's very important, and I think that it's the key, for facing this global trouble and this global challenge that we have. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Antonio. I'm keeping from your presentation that we need the civil society in whole, and we will have it in local level, regional, and joining their forces on international level to defend their identities. So culture-based global climate action. I would like to invite all of you and my friend George Kremlis to chair a panel from COP29 to COP30 at the international conference I'm organizing from 7th to 9th of April in Athens, Eugenidion, concerning transdisciplinary multispectral modeling and cooperation for cultural heritage preservation to recapture the world in crisis. So, please, George, you are concluding, and please, dear colleagues, I will extend this invitation, and I hope you will be there.
Thank you, dear Tonia, for moderating this extremely important panel and for the invitation. We are looking forward. Hopefully, we will all participate. I would like to thank Princess Dana Firas for her excellent speech. I would like to thank Svetlana Zhekova for her excellent speech, Antonio Antequera as well for his excellent speech, and all the speakers of this important event. I am sorry that we didn't manage very well at the time, as you are all passionate with the topics that you are presenting. It is difficult for a moderator to limit the time at your disposal, but I do believe that we have managed at the end. I see important personalities in the room that would have liked to take the floor: Professor Skoulos, Ambassador Kalamvrezos, other important friends who are very knowledgeable about the topic. So I hope that Tonia will manage to organize more panels, and I promise that during Circular Gaia, 2 or 3 days of symposium, we will have not only one panel on culture, but possibly 2 or 3 panels on culture to cover the whole dimension, including artificial intelligence, as you have mentioned, dear Tonia. So I would like to once again thank all the speakers, to let you know that this event has been registered and will be uploaded on the website of the European Public Law Organization, and therefore shared to all the members of our organization. Yes, and it will also be uploaded on the site circulargaia.org and also in YouTube. Therefore, it will be broadly accessible. We will send it to you, and I would like to kindly ask the speakers to send us those who have presented PowerPoint presentations, Svetlana Zhekova, for example, to share with us her presentation, as well as the ambassador and the Deputy Ambassador of Brazil, to send us their presentations to be uploaded on the site of Circular Gaia and on the site of the European Public Law Organization. So there are still a lot of cakes there. Feel free to take as many as you want at home. Unfortunately, we do not have boxes for you to serve you, but there are hartopetsetes, so you can use them. So wishing you a great evening, Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and looking forward to the next events in April, and also an event during the Delphi Forum where we will repeat what we organized last year with Princess Firas, with new speakers as well to join us. Once again, thank you very much. Have a great evening and great holidays.